Let's start the show by talking about my sponsor, Paloma Verde, and their new website, palomaverdecbd.com. Head over to palomaverdecbd.com and check them out for all of your CBD needs. They've got the gummies, tinctures, salves. So if you're needing anything to maybe chill you out, something to help you get mellowed out, something for your joint pain and stiffness, go over to palomaverdecbd.com and give them a check out. Carlos and Vanessa are awesome people. They run a great company. And if you enter the promo code FACTS at checkout, you'll get 25% off your order. Plus, any order over $75, you get free shipping. So, I don't know what you're waiting for. Head over to palomaverdecbd.com and check them out. Let's start the show. This episode will be completely taken out of context. Welcome to the Fact Check This podcast. All right, Fact Check This podcast. And today I've got my buddy Steve. Steve is going to introduce himself, give a little bit of his libertarian background. Steve comes from the peddling fiction group that where a lot of my guests tend to come from. we have a really fun group over there. If you don't know about the peddling fiction podcast, definitely check it out. Check out the YouTube group or the Facebook group and try to get in on some of the stuff that we've got going on over there. We do fun meme streams, and we used to do video calls and stuff like almost on a weekly basis. So we really need to, I'd like to get the group back into that. But Johnny still does a bi-weekly happy hour with some of the top fans from the YouTube or from the Facebook group, plus like contributors to the show and stuff like that. So Steve, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came to libertarianism, and then we'll jump into it.
Hey, yeah. So I'm Steve. I've kind of hooked up with Justin through the peddling fiction group there. As far as my introduction to really liberty and libertarianism, I was never that big into politics too much. I had kind of some opinions. I was maybe like, I would have considered myself like center left if you really were like trying to push me on stuff. But then maybe around 2011, 2012, I was starting to see some of the Ron Paul stuff, and I remember like seeing some of the memes and seeing some of the stuff that he was talking about. And I wasn't that big into politics, but I knew enough that I didn't want to vote for Obama and I didn't want to vote for Romney. and some of the stuff that Ron Paul was saying was making sense. And then I kind of was seeing some of the stuff that Rand was doing, where it was like the big one was that huge filibuster that he did. I believe it was Brennan's nomination for director of the CIA, because the Justice Department was basically saying that they had the authority to drone strike citizens, non-combatants on American soil without charges or without a trial. And so Rand Paul was kind of like, no, we still have due process, and basically was filibustering this nomination in an effort to get Holder to admit that no, we can't drone strike non-combatant citizens without charges on U.S. soil. And that was kind of wild, where it was stepping back and being like, we this is a question. We've gotten to the point where we need somebody filibustering this to really do that. And yeah, from there I like some of the stuff that Rand did, and just kind of started diving deeper into the libertarian rabbit hole. And kind of from there on, I've always considered myself a libertarian. In the past, it's just been a little tough to get in line with the party, given some of the lackluster messaging and candidates. But I think that ship's turning around a little bit, and Libertarian Party is going to really be a home for libertarians again. So I consider myself maybe on the minarchist side of things, where maybe courts, police, fire, but even then too, I could maybe be convinced of privatizing most of that stuff anyways. Yeah. So pretty big on the minarchist side, and I usually don't try to have too many of those debates with like minarchism versus anarchism, because honestly I feel like if we got to either of those, we're getting to the real details at that point.
And to show what a consummate professional I am, I did not actually charge my headphones, so I had to drop them.
Okay. No worries.
It's just to completely take a podcasting aside. It's amazing how frequently even some of the ones who are like super professional that do this like on a weekly basis and have for literally years will like I'll get the video, and at the intro of the video they'll be talking about how they just spent the last 10 minutes talking and having this excellent conversation and they forgot to hit record.
Yep.
So I don't feel too bad when I screw up because I know that it happens regularly. So we will, uh, on that topic, we will steer away from anarchism and minarchism and the difference in those things, and we'll talk about something that you are a big advocate for and like to talk about, and that is guns. And so, number one, do you keep up to very much with some of the stuff going on in the news and the fact that the Supreme Court is actually taking up a Second Amendment case from New York? Have you seen that?
I try and stay up with the news pretty consistently. The New York one, I'm not in. I might have heard of that. What is the New York one on? Is that like an assault weapons
It's
ban case?
yes, sort of, kind of. It's gosh, now of course I would say it and then completely blank out on it. Yeah, it's an assault weapons. It's kind of a general weapons ban that New York had, and it had gotten uh, it had been contested, and now it's actually going to the Supreme Court. It had, I think, if I recall correctly, it had never it got a stay put on it
Okay.
while they considered whether or not to take it to the Supreme Court, and it it kind of looks like it's going to be a slam dunk for Second Amendment advocates.
Yeah, that's awesome to see. I know I was just seeing too how California had. Well, I don't know if I'd be a little bit reluctant to call it a big win because it's still they're not quite to the finish line yet, but they had that ruling in their favor, basically overstriking the assault weapons ban there, and then right now they're in the stages of I can't remember when the go live date is, but there's a certain amount of grace period for the California government to try and appeal it to a higher court, which I'm sure they're going to try and do. But we'll see if I don't know if they hear it or they slap it down. But that one was a big win too, or at least pushing in the right direction.
Okay, so I pulled it up real quick. That one. So yeah, that one was specifically the one in California was specifically with assault. It was like an assault weapons ban, and that
Yep.
one got struck down, which is pretty surprising consider it's California. But
Yeah.
yeah, I
Well,
mean that was
I've heard good things about that judge who struck it down. At least in terms of the firearm thing. I think he was also the one who have you ever heard of Californians will refer to it as Freedom Week?
uh
They had apparently 1 week where the magazine capacity limit was gone. So it was like they had 1 week where people were like spending like hundreds and hundreds of dollars in magazines, buying stuff for like guns they didn't have because that was their one chance, their Freedom Week to get magazines.
nice.
Yeah.
So I found it real quick while we're kind of going. The New York case is a law that restricts an individual from carrying a concealed handgun in public. Uh,
Okay.
so effectively, this New York law would ban concealed carry entirely, and it had gotten appealed a couple times, and now it's going to actually make it all the way to the Supreme Court. So, and it seems like uh, I mean, most Second Amendment advocates seem to consider it a pretty solid slam dunk that this will be a good benchmark Second Amendment Supreme Court ruling. And I'm I personally am surprised that they took it up, because there have been just like slews of Second Amendment cases over the years that have been put up for consideration by the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has just summarily refused to take any of them on, like
Oh,
at any point. Which I mean, I don't know how you feel about the Supreme Court, but I kind of view it as pretty much a board of pussies that don't want to actually rule on anything that's going to be
yeah.
inflammatory or confrontational in any way. Like they try to stay out of the stuff that's actually important, because if push comes to shove, like none of them actually have the balls to put their neck on the line and take a firm position on anything. Like they want to be as milk toast as possible in that job.
Yeah. I'd agree with you there, and it seems like they're really hesitant to wade into anything at all. It can be somewhat controversial, or if they take something up, usually or a lot of the times it'll be a very very clear case. And I think at least with the Supreme Court that we have now, I'm not sure if that's going to change too much over the years in terms of their opinion for who you have on, but I think part of it is kind of shifting that Overton window um, of allowable opinion and where the consensus is at to get them to take on maybe some cases that were formerly controversial and not so much anymore.
Well, and I don't know if you've paid much attention to it, but here over the last month or two, um, there have been a couple of Supreme Court decisions that have actually gone in the opposite direction of what you would expect with a conservative majority. Kavanaugh and oh gosh, what was the first one that Trump appointed? Gorsuch.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, Neil Gorsuch.
yeah, Gorsuch. However you pronounce his damn name. Uh,
I probably butchered it.
I think you probably got closer than I did. But
Neil, we'll just call him Neil.
yeah, that Trump's first appointment. So those two have actually gone in contrary directions, as opposed to what you would expect the a conservative majority to go. And there's been a lot of research on it. Like Kavanaugh has been bad. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Kavanaugh has been bad. And as far as for anybody who championed that as a win for conservatives, he has been bad. Like
Yeah,
they're probably kind of having some regrets about letting the whole uh, uh, the way the left went after him kind of fall apart. Like they might be having some second guessing on letting him get in, because he has not been good. He pretty well he goes with the majority on everything, regardless of what it is. If it goes right, he goes right. If it goes left, he goes left. Like he is just as he goes with whatever direction the wind blows him, and that is, I mean,
yeah. Well, I think I think it too is like a lot of what politics has turned into nowadays, where it became all about the accusations and no one really actually talked about his positions, and it turned into is it a win for team D or a win for team R based on the accusation type of thing, getting this guy in versus what is his actual positions. Is this going to be a win for liberty, whether you view it on the Democrat side or the Republican side, what you personally view as liberty? And man, I didn't hear much of that conversation, if any.
none at all. And which, I mean, you and I both know it doesn't matter which side of the aisle they're on,
Yeah.
Democrat or Republican. They don't actually care about liberty. And I mean that we're kind of derailing this away from what we were going to initially talk about, but like I think that's a big sticking point that really gets to me, is the frequency with which people are only concerned about, is it a win for team R or is it a win for team D, and they refuse to actually look at any of the stats, anything that backs up what that person actually votes for, votes on, what they stand for, what they stand against. Like it it's a it's a net loss regardless of who wins, because at that point nobody cares about what the actual policies are. The only thing they care about is it a Republican or is it a Democrat?
Yeah.
And more often than not, it doesn't matter which one they are. They're fucking horrible.
Yeah. And I wonder how much of that is a either a byproduct or a feature of trying to push these people when the nomination process comes around. If it's just kind of that's where the conversation naturally goes to, or if there might be a little gamesmanship to steer the conversation on that front.
Yeah, definitely. It's man, it's the way politics are being played these days. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't. None of the particulars matter anymore. It's all about us versus them, my team versus your team. And
Well, speaking of nominations, and maybe to to tie back around a little bit, do you think the Waco kid is going to get in?
I've seen enough of that. Um, yes, yeah, I don't think. I mean, from either the Republicans or the Democrats, who's going to actually oppose that? Like
Well,
other than maybe Rand and
yeah,
Massey, like who's actually going to say no? We don't want this guy. Like, and I think if you've heard Scott Horton talk about it, like he's not the guy in the picture,
well,
but
yeah, but
he had a very major role in the aftermath of Waco and the way
yes,
that
he
the
was
people.
a big part of the prosecution. Yeah,
Right.
and to me, regardless if he was on the ground or not, I would think that would have been disqualifying, or somebody would have at least asked him some questions on that, and no one even brought it up at all. I was surprised to see that. I thought somebody would have.
Right. The way the prosecution in that was handled was, I mean, they treated those people like subhumans, basically, in the way they handled all of that. I mean, and that's probably putting it nicely. And yeah, I mean, there is nobody on either the right or the left gives two shits about that. Like, as far as all of them are concerned, Waco was a win for the government. I mean, that's unfortunately, unfortunately, that's probably the way most Americans feel. Like, other than people who run in our type of circles that have actually spent time looking at and researching and understand what the scenario was and what actually happened. Like, the average person considers that a win for America and thinks that the Branch Davidians was some sort of like weird sex cult that needed to be cleansed from the face of the earth. And it doesn't matter if they're right or left; they probably think that, which
and
is a
and
shame.
and just one example too of it goes to show how willingness to lie, or the willingness to lie about it, and just straight up bend the facts and the truth. Was, I don't know if you saw when Chipman was doing a Reddit AMA, and somebody asked him about 50 cals, and he said, well, I think they should be banned because the Branch Davidians used 50 cals at Waco to shoot down helicopters. And it was just such an out there amazing lie that he just threw out there. Like, so I don't know if he thought people weren't going to verify this, or they were like taking on face value, or figured most people wouldn't look, but it was uh, and just the willingness to throw out such an amazing lie like that was, yeah, just goes to show you how they'll color the truth and the facts.
The fact that it's 30 years later and there's enough evidence out there to not just like not just argue against that, but to completely disprove that, and that they still double down on that as like an official stance is absolutely insane. But I mean, that goes to the nature of government in and of itself. Like, they don't have to tell the truth because they trust that people are stupid enough that no one is going to actually take the time to do any level of research to say that they're wrong. I mean, the thing that we were actually going to talk about was guns, and how frequently do you see politicians get up there and just spout off complete nonsense about guns that anybody who's even held a gun knows, okay, that's complete and total bullshit. But the average person who doesn't know anything about guns and doesn't want anything to do with guns, that's terrified of guns and thinks that there's some horrible, scary thing, they're not going to put any effort into researching that. They're just going to take, because this is our trusted politician. He or she are the ones that are, they're the ones that we picked to take care of us and to protect us. They're going to take it at face value, and they're not going to do any level of research on it.
Yep.
So,
yeah,
so that gets us back to the topic that we were going to talk about to begin with. So, Steve, tell us all about guns.
So I guess I'll preface this by saying that I'm not claiming to be an expert or end all be all knowledge on the topic. I'm just a gun nerd who's a mechanical engineer, and I love guns and I love history. So I just try learning as much about guns as I can, just because that's a topic that interests me. So this is maybe some stuff on more of a basic level. So I guess we could start off with, like, people out there who are maybe new libertarians or with all the stuff that's been going on, like first time gun buyers, what might be a good decision for them in this day and age.
Yeah. And so, do you have kids? Not to get too personal, like if you don't want to answer this, say something.
Nope, I do not. Nope.
Okay, so I was gonna say, so I have kids, and I got my kids started shooting literally as soon as they were big enough to hold the gun. I should have got them out before we started this, but and then at the same time, I don't necessarily want to display my entire arsenal on a video that's going to go on YouTube. But so we have a little 22, a little Henry 22 repeater, the little Elmer Fudd gun, and it's small. It's that big maybe,
Yeah.
and super lightweight. Plus, it's a 22, so it does not kick at all.
Yeah.
And literally, as soon as my kids were big enough to put enough pressure on the trigger to make it fire, I would stand with them, or I would kneel and have them stand, and we'd put it up on their shoulder and get their arm up there, and I would help them hold it and balance it, and I would have them pull the trigger and help them cock, because they weren't strong enough to cock it at the time, but I would help them cock it and let them take some shots with this little 22, so they got comfortable with holding a gun, pulling a trigger. Even though it doesn't kick for an adult, it still has enough of a pop that a 5-6-year-old can feel it, and you get used to the feel of a gun. And my son's a crack shot now. I take him hunting with me every year, and my daughter she hasn't gotten anything hunting yet, but every time we go out, like if we don't see anything, when we're getting ready to come back in from the woods, she's like, all right, I want to shoot. I just want to shoot for, I just want to shoot a tree over there or something. Like she wants to shoot. And but, my kids aren't scared of guns. They're used to using them. So talk about like maybe what you think as far as good starter guns and stuff, because there are a lot of people in the libertarian movement who, as odd as it may sound, don't have any experience with guns.
Yeah.
Like they came to libertarianism through drugs, the drug war stuff, or opposing foreign wars, and they may not be super into the Second Amendment stuff, but they're starting to get there. And now they have questions.
Yeah. So I guess I would start off from the aspect of asking yourself, what do I want to utilize this for? Which is a big question. So like maybe you want something that's kind of an SHTF type of thing, or maybe it's home defense, or maybe it's to be able to do some hunting, or it could just be you're looking to start getting into target shooting. And I think asking yourself which of those areas you want to really get into, or what this is for, is a big part, or maybe it's a combination of some of those. So I think probably number one most common is probably like home defense. And for me, I think one of the major points to start off with that is ask people around you who you trust and value their opinions on some stuff. Do not go into a major gun store and take the clerk's attendant's word as gospel, because you will end up potentially buying something that is not going to fit well, is not going to be useful, is just not a good decision whatsoever. I just an example, I was at a gun store that I will not name, and they were selling a semi-auto 22 Magnum, and I was, I was looking at potentially a 22 Magnum pistol, and the guy was telling me about it, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, sometimes it tends to jam." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean it's 22 mag, that semi-auto, that's what they do." And he's like, "Yeah, but it's great for it. You could actually use this for self-defense." And it's like, prone to jamming, not not in my criteria. If the gun is prone to jamming, you just throw it out right away. It is, as far as a self-defense choice. But it's kind of stuff like that where you want to do your own research and talk to some people you trust to get their opinions.
I don't know that I would consider a 22 handgun to be a good self-defense gun in any scenario. Like
No,
that's something that you throw the clip in and you see how fast you could drop the clip when you're playing around just out shooting or something. Like that's
yeah,
I don't view that
no,
as a solid self-defense type of a gun anyway.
yeah. So it's kind of stuff like that where more, yeah, it's good to get opinions, but uh, what was it, Reagan who said trust but verify?
Well, so like uh, my most recent purchase, the it's a rifle, and the guy who I got it from, uh, it was it was heavier than what he was expecting, and he has shorter arms, and so it didn't fit his frame real well.
Yeah,
And I I'm 6'5". I don't have any problem with short arms. So like the gun fits perfectly for me,
yeah,
and for my frame, it doesn't feel very heavy because I'm tall enough and I'm long enough that I can support it well. And that's one of those things too that I think people may not put into consideration is when you are picking a gun, like you need to hold it.
yes,
You don't
absolutely.
you need to go to a gun store. You need to be able to, put this in your hand and verify how it fits you, because like you were saying, like that handgun right there fits my hand a lot differently than it fits my wife's hand. It
Yep.
fits my hand a lot differently than my dad's handgun or my brother's handgun. Like, we're all relatively close to the same size, but our hands are built different. My brother has much longer, skinnier fingers. My dad's hand is a lot thicker. Like the way our guns fit our hands are they're all a lot different. And so if you're not verifying that stuff, like if you see something online and you're like, oh yeah, I saw really good reviews on that, I'm going to get that gun. You get that gun and it may not fit you. Like
Yeah,
it's as much as buying clothes is a fit. Buying a gun is a fit.
yep. And the thing that you can always do too is if you see a good price online on something, a lot of the times you can go to a store and they have it in person, and they'll take it out and hand it to you, and you can see how it feels and handle it a little bit, and then just hand it back to them, and then go home and make your purchase
Right.
off the internet to ship to an FFL, if you got a better price there. So
Right. Right. That's that's something that I really feel is not taken into consideration enough is that, there is no one size fits all with any gun. Like it is a very much a personalized decision. Like you'll see people, especially on Twitter, like people will be bad mouthing certain guns. It may not be the greatest gun for a gun nut, but for somebody who's never had a gun that just needs something to learn and practice with, it might
yeah,
be the right fit. That it's what gets them, it's what gets them to learn how to handle a gun. Like it,
I think it's one of those things where it's like, if what you're looking at, is if it's a gun that's not going to malfunction, and ergonomically it fits you well. The only real difference when you're talking in the real high end stuff versus like the mid-tier stuff is if you're getting to be like a competition shooter or somebody who's like very proficient. For basic people, I mean, you're much better off buying something cheaper and using that cost difference to pay for ammo and training than you are, um, like say, if I'm looking at like a Glock or like an FN 57, you know,
Right.
like get the Glock, kind of thing. Start out there, and then maybe once you put in a lot of time and effort and get into some of the weird niche stuff, then maybe it's time to really spring for the high end.
Right. And so how would you, let's see, how do I want to word this? How would you particularly categorize the different types of firearms? So, like we were talking about handguns for self defense type things, and then so then what would be some of the other like categories that you would break guns down into? Because like everybody knows of hunting, like hunting guns, but there are, depending on the state you live in, like Kentucky, rifles are legal for hunting deer and larger game and stuff like that. But like here in Indiana, it has to be shotgun with slugs. Uh, what is it like where you are?
We have I and I may be getting this wrong, and somebody might might see this and cringe because I might be getting this wrong. But I believe in some of the southern parts of the state, it's shotgun slug only. Now I may be incorrect on that. Um, but in the areas that I generally hunt in, it's very wooded. So we have our it's basically 2 weeks with 3 weekends of regular rifle season, and then we have a weekend of muzzleloader and kind of archery starting before the rifle season, kind of in mid-September, and then running until after rifle season, well into the point where no one wants to be out in the cold.
So that sounds, that's very similar to the way Kentucky kind of breaks down. It's they have archery and then muzzle loading, and then it goes into rifle season, and rifle season runs through basically most of November, like from the first weekend of November through usually through Thanksgiving, and then after that it goes into it goes back into archery, and then but yeah, but like here in Indiana, so I do all of my like deer hunting in Kentucky because I grew up on a big farm, and we've got we got plenty of farm ground there, and I can go down and just hunt wherever, and I know the area and don't have to worry about any of the BS or tags or stuff like that.
Yep.
Like I can just go hunt. But like here in Indiana, it's a lot more strict, and it has to be shotguns with the slugs, and they're more restrictive on that stuff. So I just don't even mess with it here. Like
Well, I saw too. There's some areas where they'll do like pistol only, and I'm not sure how that works. If there's like some people who are just pulling out their like pistol caliber
like
AR.
got like the long barrel revolver with the scope on it. Like
yeah.
I don't know if I would want to deer hunt with a pistol, hunt. Not with that one anyway.
Yeah, no. But I guess you were mentioning kind of categories of guns and how I would maybe break stuff into, and I guess I would kind of sort things into almost, when it comes to handguns, kind of two categories of handguns, like maybe a target shooting or home defense category and a concealed carry category.
Yeah.
I usually view those as kind of two separate things, but I know there's people who will get one that can kind of do both, the hybrid a little bit. And then there's I would say kind of like a mid-range AR, sporting rifle kind of thing that you'd have like your AK, your AR, your Mini 14, that kind of stuff in, and then hunting rifles. I would throw in like your bolt actions, like your Henry levers, your 45-70s, all that fun stuff, and then kind of like your longer range, maybe DMR type stuff, where like AR-10s, and maybe scars and 308, or like an XCR and like a 308, that kind of thing, where it can definitely reach out to those ranges, but it's not like maybe necessarily like a
what people would
Ruger precision
think of as like a sniper rifle type thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, kind of that bridge between the mid-tier, like 500-yard rifles, kind of filling that role between that like 500 to 1,000 type of range, where they can reach out there if you want, but it's not necessarily like a Ruger precision type of thing, or like a Daniel Defense. I know they came out with a pretty incredible precision bolt action rifle. Mr. Guns and Gear was doing a review on that one, and that was pretty incredible. And so was the price tag.
And that kind of stuff, I think that kind of stuff falls more into like a sport type shooting, sort of a gun or a hobby type thing. Because like if it's fairly wooded where you are, and like even where I am, even if I'm on one of our bigger fields with lots of open ground in front of me, the longest shot I would even consider taking is maybe 150 to 200 yards. Like I'm not, you get past that, there's too many hills and tree lines, and like you're getting out into, unrealistic ranges that.
Yeah. The only time you would ever see a shot like that hunting around where I'm at or where I hunt is if you're hunting a power line. And then that's it. If you're on a power line, there's a chance that you might have enough flat ground to be able to see that kind of a shot. But yeah, most of the time it's under 100, and some people will be running 15 power scopes with like less than 100-yard shot and that kind of thing. Oh, and then the other two categories I guess I didn't touch were obviously like shotguns, and then pistol caliber carbines. So nowadays you're seeing more and more, like Ruger makes a nice pistol caliber carbine in 9mm. That's like
I've actually got one of those. I really like it.
Yep. And then all kinds of different brands are making ARs in 9, and you'll see some 10mm and 45s out there too, which I think are pretty cool, maybe pretty fun. The one thing that I would maybe caution people a little bit on those pistol caliber carbines with in an AR platform, some of those do not have a last round bolt hole open. So it's something to be aware of if you're like, especially if you've been running an AR and you're so used to having that last round bolt hole open. It's just a standard feature. And then you buy your pistol caliber carbine and you're like, oh, it's great. It's going to be just like an AR. And then it doesn't have the last round bolt hold open. It could be maybe not the end of the world, but something that might be a big disappointment to you if you're not aware of what that one does.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's get, because like the big argument from the anti-gun folks who obviously don't know a fucking thing about guns is
it the AR is not effective, or it's too effective, or both?
or that you don't need that for hunting. Well, like obviously, I don't think anybody is ever even making the argument that you need that for hunting.
Yeah, it's a very clear attempt at straw manning the argument of what it is and trying to shift it into this other little area of what is or isn't needed for hunting. And it's like that's not the debate. That never was the debate. Right. That's not the conversation. Yeah.
The Second Amendment had absolutely nothing to do with hunting. That's
yeah. And then some people will kind of take the bait, be like, oh, look at all these people that use it for hunting. It certainly is an effective hunting rifle, and it can be depending on what you're hunting. But it's like, why even take the debate and try and argue with them on that?
Is that a real thing? Do people actually use ARs for hunting? So like,
well, like hogs, like for instance, like super common for hogs. Coyotes is probably another one. You'll run a lot of those like super fast, smaller grain cartridges for coyotes.
Okay, yeah,
Some
I can
people,
see that. I was gonna say, like, if you're hunting, if you're hunting some medium to bigger game, like,
yeah,
I
some
can't even
people will
think of.
use larger grain stuff for whitetail, and it's kind of one of those things where it's like, yeah, if you're running some of those like large, like 75, 80 grain rounds, like, yeah, maybe, but I don't know if I would say it's a great idea personally. Just my
It's,
personal opinion.
I mean, I've got a bolt action single shot, and I never have a problem. Like, if if by some chance I miss with the first, I'm a quick enough reload that I'm gonna get the second off. Like, it's not like I need a semi-automatic to. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know. Maybe I'm a little more practiced than some of the average gun idiots, but like that's never occurred to me as even being something of a necessity in any way for that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think it comes more down to as far as is just the capabilities of the cartridge in terms of what kind of bullet weight you're pushing out and what you feel comfortable
Yeah,
enough with hunting.
that
And
makes
to me,
sense.
that like yeah, and to me the 223 556 just it you can hunt deer with it, and certainly if it was like an end of the world type situation where you're trying to like feed your family, yeah, excellent choice. But in terms of just like an average everyday hunt, I would opt for uh more of a traditional hunting cartridge.
So
And two, if that's the route you want to go, there's tons of deals on uh cheap bolt actions in 308 or 30-06, or used stuff in stores that you can find deals on too. And a lot of those guns, there's nothing wrong with them. They're great shooting. They're a lot you most of the time, especially for like new shooters, um, the gun's accuracy is not the limiting factor. So that's one other thing to keep in mind, I guess. Don't be so focused on, especially with bolt action guns, is the accuracy of it, unless you're to that point where you've got a little bit of practice in and kind of know what your capabilities are versus what the gun is.
right, and so talk about that because that's something that uh, for new gun users, I don't think some of the safety practice, like some of the just I don't know, like I started hunting when I was in second or third grade with my dad. Like I've been around guns literally my entire life. Um, so that stuff all just kind of is second nature for someone like me, and I'm sure to some extent for you. But like for
Hmm.
somebody who doesn't have any experience with guns, or not much anyway, and they're still kind of new to this, like talk about some of the gun safety basics, some of the stuff that like you need to understand about handling a gun, taking care of a gun, shooting a gun, practice, just sort of
Yeah.
the general ideas behind being a responsible gun owner.
Yeah. So I guess the most important thing I would always start off with, that to me is the rule number one of safety, because you will never shoot yourself or somebody if you at least follow this rule. You should follow all of them, but this one to me is why it's most important, is like always keep your muzzle in a safe direction. And that, believe it or not, it takes practice. You need to handle guns for a little bit before you really kind of have that down, and that concept of where should it always be pointing. And with rifles and shotguns, it comes a little more easy with not as much practice. Handguns is kind of a different story. The first time somebody picks up a handgun, they really need to be concentrated on I'm I'm pointing it in this direction deliberately. I know why I'm pointing it there, and I'm focused on keeping it pointed in that direction. I think that's number one, and that just a lot of it comes with just paying attention and practice, honestly. But I think that's probably number one, like one of the biggest things. And then the other kind of safety rules that you treat every gun as if it were loaded, and keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. That's another big one.
Yeah, the number one thing that my dad always impressed on us was you treat every gun like it's loaded. Even though like in our house growing up, none of the guns were actually loaded in the house. You
Yep.
treated every gun like it was. And as an adult, like all of mine are always loaded. And
Yep.
that's always a big thing that I've always impressed on the kids is you you do not mess with these guns. They are all loaded and they will always be loaded, and you should always treat them like they're loaded. And a funny thing about that, so to kind of derail a little bit, like we used to have our bedroom down in the basement, and all of my guns were in the closet, just in the closet. At that time, I didn't have a good gun safe for everything. It was early on after I'd gotten divorced, and I just had everything in the closet. And we'd have friends over and stuff, and all the kids would go downstairs and they would play down there because it's cool and it's big open space. And nobody ever messed with a gun ever once. Like,
Yep.
and like they would be in our closet playing hide and seek, and nobody ever messed with a gun because my kids knew all of these guns are loaded. And if you see anybody going around the guns, you stay away. Like that's, rule number one. And that's always, something that comes from these super, gun control nuts is how dangerous guns are, especially for kids. Like I got a house full of kids and have had additional kids here on multiple occasions, all right there, like literally in the same room with the guns, and never have even had anybody pick one up, much less anything happen with them. Like
and I think that's one of the biggest things too is like know who's in your home, and have that conversation with your family on like, hey, these are the right procedures, don't touch it. This is where everything is, and don't pick it up or go handling it. And maybe if you have somebody over and have something that's not secured, maybe don't let them in that area, depending on who it is. But yeah, have that conversation with them, and the whole safe thing too is not just a good idea as far as like securing them, but also too, I think one of the big things is storage and keeping them in a dry environment. So you can buy portable dehumidifiers to throw into safes, and I think that's one of the biggest advantages to having a safe. Or you can buy the little like silica gel packets. You can buy a pack of like 100 of them off Amazon for maybe like $20. You can just throw a handful of those packets in an ammo container in your safe, and that's a great way to keep the humidity down as well.
That, like as far as the knowing who's in your home and stuff like that, like teaching kids, especially like these basics about a gun, like that goes a long way. Like a lot of people act like guns are some like super dangerous, scary thing, and they don't even want to talk about it with kids. Like they don't even want kids to play with, like to have play guns or toy guns or stuff like that. Like they want there to be this like super scary stigma about guns all the time, when proper education and training is really the best cure for all of that.
Yeah, and I think the end goal is a healthy level of respect without fear. I think that's that's how I'd best describe the point to get to. Not fearing, but having a good level of respect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So talk about some of the like the basics with gun care. Like you talked about storing them in a good, like a dry location, but some of the basics for care and also for like practicing and getting the gun out and doing some shooting and getting comfortable with it. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I guess I can start off with maybe kind of like the cleaning, storage, maintenance aspect of it touch on that real quick. And I'll just say that there are a lot of products out there, but in this day and age, there's also a lot of good information. So you can go on YouTube and find reviews on like, hey, I did this scientific trial and this type of oil is best for storing rifles, and this is the best type for cleaning, and this is the best type for lubricating, or this is a good all around one. There's a great load of information out there in terms of products to use for storing, cleaning, lubricating, that kind of thing. As far as practicing goes, man, in this day and age, it can be tough. Like, depending on where you live, there might be it might be like an hour drive to an indoor gun range where you have to pay like $50 for a half hour of shooting and that kind of thing. So it's tough. Ideally, it's nice to. I just kind of grew up in an area where we'd have spots where they were just like public land with a backstop and a gravel pit, and you'd set up your targets or your cans or whatever you wanted to shoot, and you just went and shot.
I guess I was
So,
really lucky in that regard. I grew up on a farm, and whenever, if we want to do some shooting, we'd just go out in the backyard and set up stuff because, you just got a field that goes for a quarter mile out this direction, and there's a tree line on the other side of it. And then on the other side of that tree line is another field that goes for another half mile. Like, there's nothing out there that, there's nothing out there. So you set up all your targets out in the field, and you can just set up and sight stuff in and do all the shooting you want.
I will emphasize this to like people who are maybe just getting started. Make sure the land is public or where you have permission to use it. And also to like, you want to be shooting like against a backstop or against a hill. You want there to be something that's going to stop that bullet. If you have like a handful of trees and like there's some houses over on the other side, like don't shoot there. Make sure that you have a sufficient backstop or you're shooting up against a hill or something like that.
Yeah,
where,
you'll see some of those that it's like a picture of somebody that's got this target and everything set up in their yard, and then like
on a wood fence.
yeah, and then when you take like a like the overhead view of it, you can see that like on the other side of the fence is like a house and all kinds of other stuff. It's like, oh my god.
I think, or maybe at least hope, that most of those are a joke.
I hope so, but at the same time, as dumb as the average person is, it would not surprise me if those are.
Well, I can't remember if it was. I think I'm trying to remember who came up with this first. What it was like. Think about how dumb the average person is. Now realize that half the people are dumber than that. I
think
can't
it
remember
was George Carlin
who that was.
And that's
So,
and like shooting glass bottles and stuff like that, like that's not smart. That's stuff that they do in the movies, but that's really not smart. I don't.
I mean, if you're looking for cheap targets too, like a lot of the times what we do is just like grab the recycling box and grab a thing of aluminum cans and like fill them with dirt so they don't fly around too much, and shoot a bunch of these cans and then just load them up in the bag after you're done. It's a cheap, easy little target if you're just looking for something to kind of plink around or get started with.
Yeah, that's something I think people don't understand too. Is you don't want to just shoot those things, especially if you're shooting it with a smaller caliber bullet like a 22 or something, because you'll get some ricochet off of those things. Like you don't want to shoot metal, or you don't want to shoot glass bottles because there's a chance of the glass exploding or a ricochet. You don't want to just shoot an empty aluminum can. Like, you need to fill it up with dirt or something so that it's got some weight to it, and it's going to actually have some something that's going to stop that bullet. You're not going to get ricochet or anything. That you want to think about it, because while, like, for you and I, we've been around guns probably literally forever, that's stuff that's just second nature, because they're just the rules that you grew up with. But for somebody who's new, like, they see the way it's done on movies and TV, and just go out and start shooting shooting metal cans and glass bottles and end up with
or rocks.
Yeah, glass shrapnel going everywhere. Or,
don't shoot a rock, everybody.
Yeah. Oh my God.
The other one too is that there's a lot of good resources on is shooting steel targets safely. If you're lucky enough to be at like an outdoor range that has a steel target set up, or a friend has a steel target set up, or you have the resources to build your own, there's a lot of good information on how to do it safely, or maybe I should say like reduced risk, because generally like shooting steel targets, there's always a little bit of a risk of getting hit with spall, even if you're doing everything right. But there's steps you can take as far as what type of steel you're using, what type of rounds you're using, how you set up the targets. Are they free to move, or if they're not, they're you set them up at an angle so it deflects things downward. And even the face of them, if you shoot a target a long time, you'll get that pitting in there, and that can redirect around. So there's a lot of good resources to look at on shooting steel safely. Do not ever just walk up like a few feet from a steel target and shoot it. Do not do that ever. Bad choice.
Yeah. I mean, trying to maintain distance on anything that you're shooting at, especially with like practice rounds or target rounds, that kind of stuff. You definitely want to try to make sure that you have a decent amount of space between you and your target. Like, you don't want to be too close to anything you're shooting, even if it's with a BB or a pellet gun. Like, that stuff that stuff may not kill you, but it can still hurt, and you want to make sure that you're. I mean, that's my son likes to shoot his BB gun. He'll set up little targets and stuff out in the yard, and he'll get out there and shoot. And we always make sure that we're setting it up where he's in a good position, where he's got something, for a good backstop behind him, even though it's a BB gun. We want to make sure that he's not going to get stray BBs flying off that's going to shoot somebody's window out on the highway or some dumb. And then, making sure that he's setting his targets up appropriately, and he's got plenty of space, or he's not getting any ricochet or anything, bouncing back. Because, the last thing I want is a Red Ryder BB gun, shoot your eye out situation.
Yeah. I was just gonna say that. Which I suppose ties into too how eye protection. Always a good idea. That spall, and when I talk about spall, for people who might be new to things, basically the spall is just kind of when a bullet deforms, it's kind of like the little metal pieces that are flying off of it, and that hot metal spall. Maybe it could, if you're shooting metal targets or shooting something, it's possible to get like a piece of spall on the arm or on the leg, and it's not fun. It might hurt. If you get it in the eye, you can really do some damage. So eye pro, always a good idea.
and I think very possibly even more important than that is hearing protection.
Yes.
When I was younger, we did a big shooting day. We loaded up a whole bunch of guns, and we set up all these targets out in the middle of a big field, and we did a whole bunch of shooting, and none of us were hearing protection. And I swear I had a ringing in my ear for 3 straight days. Like, it was a lot of fun, and we were shooting stuff, and it was a blast. And for 3 days, I almost couldn't hear anything. It was just a steady ring. And it's like, oh my God, like, why did I not put earplugs in or something? Like, I
used to be in the construction world, and the amount of guys that you would walk up to and speaking a normal speaking voice and get a what? Or they give you a certain ear to speak into was there's a lot of them. So yeah, super important to wear that hearing protection. And the other thing I maybe like tie into that a little bit too is that earplugs generally will reduce decibels more than ear muffs. So it's something to be aware of. Like, depending on what you're shooting, like ear muffs might be plenty sufficient, but if you're shooting like a 308 with a big old muzzle brake on there, maybe you need earplugs instead of ear muffs, or maybe you even want to go like nothing wrong with going dual hearing protection too. So all hearing protection is not created equal. Depending on what you're shooting, you might want to opt for one or the other.
Yep. Very good. Got anything else you want to talk about? I think we're about up on time here. I've got some other stuff I've actually got to do here in a little bit, and I feel like we've covered a lot of like the real important stuff. You got anything else you want to kind of touch on?
Maybe real quick, I'll add home defense if you're looking for something for that. Know your house and think about, like, do I have to worry about over penetration? Like for me personally, like on the first floor, it's I know where everything is, and that's not a concern for me. I have my own house. Like if you live in an apartment building, the big concern with over penetration. Do I want to just protect my house? Do I have land I need to protect? Do I want something that can be home defense and concealed carry? Maybe you got to make some compromises there. Uh, it's better than not having anything. I would not take Joe Biden's advice and just buy a shotgun. More ammo capacity is generally better, especially in a life or death situation. And if you buy a break action, you get 2. Pump action, you might have 5 or 6, or a semi-auto. And man, uh, they're effective and they can be used very effectively. I would steer away from that. Great all-around rifle just for everything. If you're just looking for like home defense, hunting, shooting, you could go with an AR. It's not a bad choice. If you're looking for, I have $600 or $700, I want to buy one thing that can do almost everything. Not a bad choice. Surplus stuff. There's a lot of cool surplus stuff that's still sort of floating around, but prices are going up, and they make it very tough to get new, cool, like collector surplus stuff in nowadays. So if you have any interest in that now, I would say, as long as you do a little bit of research and don't get completely ripped off, if you buy now, in 5 or 10 years, you'll be like, man, I'm glad I bought that. For instance, like a case of Mosins, you could buy like 20 for $2,000. I used to hear, back in the, early 90s, late 80s kind of thing at gun shows. And now people are selling them for like 400, $500 pop. Same thing with SKSs and some of those cheap Chinese AKs. So if you're into the collector stuff at all, and you have some money to throw around, as long as you're not getting ripped off and kind of trust the source, buy now. It will go up. I guarantee you that, regardless
Yeah,
if it dips a little.
finding a source that you trust. I think that's important. I had I'd actually found a website for ammo that I had some of my like crypto trading that I had done that I just had like Dogecoin went up stupid, and so I cashed some of that in, and it's I put $20 on it and ended up with 200. So I got some extra play money.
Using
And
your
I was trying to find.
Dogecoin profits to buy ammo might be the most libertarian thing I've ever heard.
Well, see, I was trying to, couldn't find ammo anywhere around here. Like none of the gun shops had any, and at the gun shows it was like outrageous. So I had some of my Dogecoin money, and I found a website, and I was like, all right, if it's a total ripoff, this is play money as far as I'm concerned anyway. Like I'll live and learn. And so I made an order. 3 days later, it was here, nice packaging and everything. I was like, all right, like they're legit. So that's where I've been ordering my ammo from, and like finding a place that is good that you trust. And like we've got a couple good gun stores here in town that like I can go to, and they'll let me hold it and look at it, and I can think about it, and if I want to buy it, they'll even hold it for, like, if I know I want to buy it but I'm not sure if I want to do it today, or they'll hold it for me so that I can come back. Finding I think buying online not necessarily isn't a bad thing, but if you can find a good place that you can go and actually meet with people and get to
Yeah.
make those connections, like learning how to trust people in that industry. I think that goes a long way.
And I'll say too, for the ammo side of things, one good way to go about it is if you don't have a local source or a place where you can get reasonably priced stuff, or they don't have it in, there are like websites you can go to that compile all the different prices, like ammoseek.com is one, and you can sort by price per round. Buying ammo on the internet, personally, I would only buy new, none of the remanufactured stuff. So they'll sell stuff that says remanufactured, or there'll be reloads. I would steer clear of that. You might save a little money, but you're more likely to have squib rounds and stuff like that. But sites like that, like ammoseek.com, you can sort by like new, brass case, manufacturer if you want, sorted by price per round.
If you're getting reloads, source that local and get it from somebody you trust. Like,
really trust. Like,
don't be buying that shit online.
I don't think they're, man, even most of the people I trust, it's I'd be hesitant to shoot reloads that weren't like my own personal reloads. But the other thing that's nice about like ammoseek.com is you can see like reviews of the site. So it's like some of the bigger names like LAX Ammunition or Palmetto State Armory. They'll have reviews on there, so you know which ones are not a scam kind of thing, and the shipping and handling price. So not a bad route to go. Do not assume that your local gun shop has the best price on ammo if you're not familiar with what typical ammo prices are. Some of these small shops order it off of like Gunbroker, and then they'll charge up the price another like 25%, and you'll be paying like, I've seen like $30 plus for a box of steel case 9mm at small shops. It's insane. And meanwhile, on the internet, you can get a box of new brass case for like a little over 20.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, $20.
Be aware. Yeah.
Well, Steve, thanks for coming on, and I think this will be my Monday episode. Yeah, I'm going to do this for the Monday episode. I like this. So thanks for coming on. We will definitely try to do this again. And
yeah, I can talk all day on guns, so plenty more material.
For anybody listening, if you got any questions about guns or in particular that you're not sure about or want to know about or maybe have questions about, hit me up, hit Steve up. We'll come back. We'll do a ask me anything type of thing where we'll answer all your questions and cover the stuff that maybe we just as being two people that have been around guns for most of our lives, it's stuff that we might not think about, but it might be questions that you would have that aren't at the top of our list of that stuff because it's stuff that we take for granted. I mean, I know for me, like, there's a lot of stuff with guns that I probably take for granted, that having kids and teaching my kids, I got to kind of relearn some of that stuff. And, so there, we all have blind spots. And so if there are questions about stuff, hit us up and let us know. And in the meantime, I'll be back on Wednesday to talk about a completely not fun topic. And I'm not going to spoil it because it is definitely not going to be fun, but I'm going to enjoy it. Have a good one, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.